such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray, open it to page 15. We shall repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he's leaving for town.
Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious that he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanour is to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that's why he often looks a little bored when we go together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. I think we might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a young man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I am not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favour of this modern mania of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I'm not sure I should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but memory usually chronicles the things that haven't happened, and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Morty sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? Oh, how wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
Well, the good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That's what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. Was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. Oh, I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child. These speculations are profitless.
Oh, but I see Dr. Chelsea will come here from the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroke in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when I came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Oh, but that is strange. Well, I'm fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil. I hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor is drawn from Peter. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet?
We do not expect him until Monday afternoon.
I guess he is one who likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts an unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Igeria and her pupil any longer.
Igeria? But my name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely drawn from pagan authors. I shall see both, no doubt, at evensong.
Oh, I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I do have a headache after all, and a walk might do good.
Oh, with pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Oh, Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B for the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Wedding's in town?
Yes, miss. You seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden and said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Oh, tell Mr. Wedding to come here. I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
Oh. I've never really met any wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. Oh, I'm so afraid you look just like everybody else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
Oh, you're under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you're not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being good this whole time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course, I have been rather reckless.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Oh, I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it would be very pleasant.
It's much pleasanter here with you.
Oh, I don't understand how you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I am obliged to go back on the first train Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Could it be missed anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if anyone wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you'd better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you on your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
Oh, I certainly will let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he was telling us on Wednesday night at dinner that you'd have to choose between this world, the next, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes. But are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That's why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
Oh, how thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't come in.
Oh, thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A marshmallow?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cecily.
I don't think it could be quite right for you to speak to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Oh, but Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You're the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I'd care to catch a sensible man. I wouldn't know what to talk to him about.
You are too much alone to be Dr. Chasuble. You should be married. A misanthrope, I understand, but a woman-thrope? Never.
Oh, believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church is distinctly against matrimony.
Well, that is obviously why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation.
Surely a man's equally attractive when married.
Well, no married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
I've been told not often to her.
Well, that all depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. Oh, I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. Cecily.
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Oh, Mr. Worthing.
Oh, Mr. Worthing.
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you until Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I hope this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Oh, still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead!
Oh, your brother Ernest dead.
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Oh, dear Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere consolation. You have the consolation of knowing that you are the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
My poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Oh, very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I received a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
The severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Oh, charity, dear prison charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts.
No. He expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
Paris? That hardly points to any serious state of mind at the last. And no doubt you wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manner in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, in this present case, distressing. I have preached at confirmations, christenings, harvest days, days of humiliation and festivals. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral, charity sermon on behalf of the Society of the Discontent amongst the upper orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
You mentioned christenings, I think, dear Doctor. I suppose you know how to christen all right? I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
Well, but is any particular infant you're interested in, Mr. Worthing? Your brother, I believe, was unmarried, was he not?
People who
Oh,
are
yes.
entirely for pleasure usually are.
Well, it isn't merely for any child, dear Doctor. I am fond of children. No, I wish to express the desire to be christened myself this afternoon if you have nothing better to do.
Surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already?
I have no memory of it.
Do you have grave doubts upon the subject?
I certainly intend to have. No, I don't know if the thing would bother you in any way, though, or if you think I am too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling, indeed the immersion of adults, is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion.
You need have no apprehension. Sprinkling is all that's required, indeed, but necessary. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour do you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot around about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar cases to perform at that time. A recent case of twins that occurred in one of your outlying cottages in your Earnest Act. Poor Jenkins the carter, most hard-working man.
I don't see much fun being christened alongside other babies. Would seem childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably admirable. Now, dear Mr. Worthing, I shall not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I merely beg that you not be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often a blessing in disguise.
Seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
Cecily!
Uncle Jack, do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think's in the dining room? Oh, your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I don't have a brother.
Oh, Uncle Jack, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we'd all resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
I the dining room. Oh, I don't know what it all means. I think it is absurd. What happened?
Brother John, I've come up from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for the trouble I've caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think him coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is much good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me that his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, who he goes to visit so often, and surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
He's been talking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Oh, yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I won't have him talking to you about Bunbury or about anyone else. It's enough to drive anyone perfectly frantic.
Oh, of course, I admit the faults were all on my side, but Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it's the first time I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this shall be the last time I will ever do it.
Pleasant is it not to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave these two brothers alone.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Oh, certainly. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my dear child.
We shouldn't be too quick in our prejudgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algier! You must leave this place as soon as possible! I don't allow Bunbury here!
I've unpacked Mr. Ernest's things and put them in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
His luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and put it in the room next to yours.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful lad you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
Quite aware of that.
Well, Cecily's a darling.
And you are not to talk of Miss Cardew in that way. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It's perfectly childish to be in deep mourning for a man who's really staying with you in your house as a guest for a whole week. I call it grotesque.
You are most certainly not staying with me for a whole week as a guest or as anyone else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Oh, I certainly won't leave you so long as you're in mourning. It'd be most unfriendly. If I was in mourning, you'd stay with me, I suppose. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw anybody take so long to dress, and with such little result.
Well, at any rate, it is always better than being overdressed as you are.
If I am ever a little overdressed, I make up for it by being always immensely overeducated.
Your attire is absurd and your conduct outrageous and your presence here in my garden is utterly absurd. However, you have got to leave by the 4:05. And I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it's been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. I must see her before I go, make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I merely came back to water the roses. I thought you were Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from one whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced to is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait a moment for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I don't offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you appear to me to be in every way the visible personification of absolute perfection.
Oh, I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you'll allow me, I'll copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no, you see. It is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it does appear in such form, I do hope you'll order a copy. But pray, Ernest, I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You can go on. I am quite ready for more. Oh, Ernest, don't cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and don't cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think it could be quite right for you to tell me you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense now, does it?
Darling.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell her to come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
I think Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed to know you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone else in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy, of course. Why, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And of course a man who is very much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him. Ah, I dare say it was foolish of me, Ernest, but I fell in love with you.
Darling, and when was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another, and with a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this old dear tree here. The next day, I brought this little ring in your name, and here's the bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Oh yes, you have wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given you, you're leading such a bad life. And here is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
No, I couldn't possibly. It would make you far too conceited. Besides, the last 3 wrote to me after I'd broken off the engagement. So beautiful, and so badly spelled, that I can hardly read them now without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
No, of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
Why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all, Cecily. I'm very much hurt indeed to hear that you broke it off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would have hardly been a really serious engagement if it wasn't broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
Oh, what a perfect little angel you are.
Oh, you dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You'll never break up our engagement again, Cecily.
No, I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Oh, you mustn't laugh at me, darling. But it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love a man whose name is Ernest. There is something in that name. I pity any poor a married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance?
But I don't like the name, Algernon.
Well, my own sweet, loving little darling. I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It's not at all a bad name. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. More than half the chaps in the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I cannot give you my full, undivided attention.
Cecily, you're rector here, I suppose, thoroughly experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church?
Oh, Dr. Cheswell is a most learned man. He hasn't written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see at once the most important christening. I mean, our most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be more than half an hour.
Considering we've been engaged for the last 3 months, and I've only met you today, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
Oh, what an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. Oh, I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in this library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose, one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't like women who are interested in philanthropic work. It is so full of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. That's a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I like you already, more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
Oh, it is so nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then it is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've never heard of Papa, I suppose?
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I am pleased to say, is entirely unknown, and I think that's quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma's views on education are remarkably strict. Has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
You were here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes. I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cecily. I have liked you ever since I met you, but I am bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in your appearance.
In fact, if I may speak candidly,
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should be quite candid.
well, to speak with perfect candour, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men with the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but this is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Oh, Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Oh, well, that accounts for it. Now that I think of it, I don't think I've heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible for any cloud to come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure it is not Mr. Earnest Worthing who is your guardian.
I'm quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret out of it to you. A little country newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Ernest and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I feel there has been some slight error. Mr. Earnest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I think you are under some misconception, for Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One must always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
The poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise. I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I trapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? There is no time for wearing the shallow masks of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say I have never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? Ugh, I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden, this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there are any flowers in the country.
Flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I don't know how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does.
Ah, that's what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I heard the aristocracy are suffering from it very much at current moment. So I've been told. Miss Fairfax, would you like some tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar isn't fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
And back to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I will not go.
From the moment I met you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions were invariably right.
Ah, well, it seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character in the neighbourhood to make.
Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling!
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
to sweet little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
Oh, I thought there must have been some misunderstanding. The gentleman who has his arm around your waist at present is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Oh, here is Ernest.
My own love.
Just a moment, Ernest. Are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn. I mean, yes, to Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman whose arm is at present around your waist is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief! Oh! Is your name really Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked, but my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
Oh, my sweet wronged Gwendolyn!
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I'd like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life that I have ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I must say that I am really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. But I must speak frankly and say that I have no brother Ernest. I have never had a brother. I have never had a brother at all, and I have not the smallest intention of ever having a brother in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Have you never had a brother of any kind?
Never, not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to follow us there.
Oh, certainly. Men are so cowardly.
This ghastly state of affairs is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes, and a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is too. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you've no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, that's absurd. One has the right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist, good heavens.
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in this life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction that I have in this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't quite be able to run down to the country as often as you used to, dear Algie. And a good thing, too.
Your brother is a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing either.
Well, as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite absurd. But to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defence at all for you deceiving a clever, brilliant, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that is all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible business? I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. Butter would probably get on my cuffs. One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It's the only way to eat them.
Well, I say it's perfectly heartless you're eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to eat them in that greedy way.
Jack, I wish you'd have the tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens! I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless, sweet muffins.
Said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a different thing.
Oh, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
Oh, Algie, I just wish you would go.
You can't possibly expect me to go without having some dinner. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does. Except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear boy, the sooner you get that nonsense out of your head, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself this afternoon at 5:30. And I naturally will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolen would wish it. We both can't be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have the right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence that I have ever been christened by anybody, and I should think it extremely probable that I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It is completely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know my constitution can stand it. You are unsure about having ever been christened. I must say, I think it very dangerous you venturing on it now. It could make you very unwell. You've hardly forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off this week in Paris by a severe chill.
Yes, but you said a severe chill wasn't hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
Oh, that is nonsense. You talk nothing but nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish you wouldn't. There's only 2 left.
Did
I told you I was particularly fond of muffins. Tea cake. Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served to your guests? What ideas do you have of hospitality?
Algy, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why won't you go?
Well, I haven't quite finished my tea yet. There's still 1 muffin left.